architecture. Some of the architects are not really into Gothic architecture, so they would want uh, to go back with the classical styles. That is why ni-rebirth ang classical, which is Roman and Greek architecture. So from the term rebirth, that era is now called Renaissance architecture. So during the Renaissance architecture, the highlight is using of those Roman and Greek styles, the columns, the orders, the Doric, Tuscan, Ionic, and so on and so forth. Having your buildings in a way na proportional siya, but later, early Renaissance, High Renaissance, late Renaissance, later on that part, I think the architects are quite bored with what they're doing because they're just really reusing the old classical styles. So this time around, they've added art. So Baroque architecture is similarly inspired by Renaissance architecture, but they add on more on the ornaments. Okay. So what are the characteristics? So we have the domes, we have the quadratura. So later on, makita nyo na quadratura. We have the grand stairways. So kanang mga buildings niyo makita sa Europe, especially in London. Kanang makita sa mga movies, nga mga grand stairways. And then lots of the ornaments are in gold. So those buildings are actually constructed and designed during the Baroque architecture. So we have the use of mirrors, gigamit na sila. Solomonic columns, I don't have a picture of that column, but actually, mura na siya og kanang, how do you call this in Bisaya? Are you familiar with the bread na linubid? Like, kanang mura siya gituyok, gitwist na pan bitaw niya taason. It looks like that, ang Solomonic columns. Mura siya kanang pan na linubid. Mura gituyok, bitaw gitwist. And lastly, we have here the elliptical or oval spaces. So let's just hear some examples. Okay, so here, this is the dome of a certain church, muna iyang dome, and the dome is now being painted with trempe oeil or trempe oeil. Dili na siya fresco. Again, what's the difference between trempe oeil and fresco? The difference is in fresco, when you plaster your wall, syempre imong wall basa pa, di ba? Automatically or directly they provided or they applied paint on it. So basa pa ang plaster, butang silag paint. So that paint would be absorbed by the plaster, and together with the plaster, mas ligon siya during the time, no? Ang frescoes. But in terms of visibility, it's not that realistic. Why? Kaya again, no? You can't achieve realistic painting in a certain plaster nga basa pa and then mukatag din siya. So this time around, they have this another type of art, which is what they call trempe oeil. So what they used is they used oil painting. So this time around, completely flat wall or completely finished wall. Dry na siya nga wall. Dili na siya yung basa pa sa plaster. And they painted what the figures they would want to paint. And this time around, they achieved a very detailed and highly mura na siya tinuod, no, nga type of painting. Like for example, the paintings of Michelangelo in Sistine Chapel, in the ceiling of Sistine Chapel. So gitawag ni siya, this part right here, og quadratura. So paintings and trempe oeil of angels and saints on the dome and on the ceiling. Cartouche is actually this one. So muna siya ang cartouche. So it's an ornament usually above a door, above a window. Added ni siya during the Baroque architecture. So in Renaissance architecture, the ornaments are quite minimized. Mostly the the ornaments that we have are those cornices, moldings, but they don't have this kind of ornaments during the Baroque architecture. And here, it's a plan of a basilica in of the 14th Holy Helpers. So if you notice the way they plan it, they included oval spaces. So here, narthex, the nave, dili na siya clearly purely na vertical, horizontal, or rectangular. Some of the spaces is based on the oval na siya nga area. So some of them, ang ilang domes is not it's not clearly nga circular domes or polygonal domes. Some of them have this oval base for the domes. So ingana na no during the during the Baroque architecture. Here, if you example, last two examples for this slides, ingani ang example no, for the Baroque architecture. So you have this a very common design of a church, but here if you look at the top, nasa palahi nga na art sa iyang tower, di ba? And then though the design is balanced, proportion, which correlates with Renaissance architecture, but the additional of the ornaments makes it a new style, which is what we call the Baroque architecture. And in the same way here, gipintala na siya blue, so di na siya matawag og Renaissance architecture. And then here, they reuse those kind of domes. Sa may tawag niya nga domes. These are bulbous domes or onion domes. So gigamit na ni siya. So this is the Cathedral de la Resurrection in St. Petersburg in Russia. This is in Russia. Wala na ko na nahatag na rin nga example, no? But one of the best example actually, which is pwede po siya during the Islamic and actually Baroque architecture sa siya, is the church sa Russia, which is kanang nigamit og bulbous domes. So later siguro I would add on that one sa supplemental videos that I will send to you guys. Okay, so this is the end for the Baroque, and we'll now go to modern architecture. So I'll just change my slides right here. Kandela. This one, thank you for sending this shakoy there, no? Yeah, the correct term is shakoy. Shakoy there, yeah. This is a Solomonic dome. So that's good. Thank you for sharing this one. Uban wag ko ilag shakoy, no? But dugay na ko wala ka shakoy actually. Siguro ko ang uban wa kay ilag shakoy. Unsa man na sir? It looks like that. No, masyad ka nang gi-twist nga bread. Okay. Nani na share? Ano ko yung share?
Makita na sir.
So makita ra, hopefully makita ra, no? Okay, so let's now go to modern architecture. I think some of you guys are very familiar with this. Like for example, like in your subjects, in your design subjects, pangutanon mo nga, what's the concept of your building? Unsa man na siya? Or unsay concept, unsay style sa imong building nga gi-design by? Modern na siya, modern architecture, modern something. Uh, that's actually correct, partly correct, and that's actually partly not correct. Why? Because modern architecture, there's two types though. As what I've researched a few days ago, there's two types of modern architecture. The modern architecture, which is the capital M, and the modern architecture with the small m. So when we talk about the capital M modern architecture, that's the type of architecture that originated or started during the 19th century. Actually, late 18th century nag-start na ang modern architecture. That's the modern architecture that's capital M. We can also use the modern architecture, which is the small m, which is the term modern magod, the term or the meaning of that word modern is the current style. So before nigamit ang modern na small letter m for our current style, but actually right now we could use contemporary architecture para dili siya mag-mix sa term ng modern. But again, the current style, it's in history of architecture, dili na siya modern architecture. The current style right now that we have is the contemporary architecture. So, unsa man kiday ning modern architecture? Okay? So, modern architecture or modernism is a deliberately philosophical and practical estrangement from the past in the arts and literature occurring in the course of the 20th century and taking form in any various innovative sorry. And taking form in any various innovative movements. So again, no, ato ibalik, deliberate philosophical and practical estrangement from the past in the arts and literature occurring in the course of the 20th century and taking form in any various innovative movements. So meaning anang 20th century is actually from 1901 up to 2000. So that's the full length of the 20th century. So 1901 up to year 2000. But actually, modernism started way before that. So later on, ma-learn na to na siya. So the birth of modern architecture is due to these things. So we have here new materials, technology, and needs were drastically changing the profession of architecture. So before, our needs are mostly on the churches, mostly on the castles, but technology, wait lang ha, be right back guys, na nag-deliver sa kakadali lang. Sorry. Hello. I'm back. Kanina ilad ta sa 10-10, no? Okay, so again, new materials, technology, and needs were drastically changing the profession of architecture. So breaking free from ancient Greek and Roman prototypes, that's the Renaissance architecture, which is the previous style of architecture before the modern architecture. Aside from those small styles, no, we have this Baroque and other small styles, because there are small styles emerge in between Renaissance and modern architecture. And the changing face of growing cityscape, the rise of skyscrapers, and this time around, America comes into focus as a center of modern design. So if you notice, during our previous discussions, most of the areas that we've discussed, from the early Christian, Romanesque, Byzantine, Romanesque, and then we have Gothic, Renaissance architecture. Most of these are really in that Europe area, because before that's the center of commerce, or in terms of development in the world. Mostly it happens within Europe area during that time. And now that there's new materials, technology, uh, the type of work that we have is mostly into industrial world, and now America comes into the picture, and the rise of skyscrapers, which is a need during that time, or still up to this time, give birth to a new type of architecture, which is modern architecture. So that's the reason why na ni nagsugod, no, or natawo ang modern architecture. So what led to modernism? So nganong ni gawas maning term na modernism, or nganong niabot man ta nga phase. So one is population increase, no, nidaghan ang tao. So we have as an architect during the time, or during those time, ang mga architect required to design spaces, required to design buildings that fits on this demand. So ang demand is population increase. So what are the spaces, or what are the buildings na pwede nila i-design so that it could solve this problem? Number two is industrialization. So this time around, industrialization started, and still creating new technologies which really affects the practice of architecture. Number three, we have new materials for building. Okay. And then we have World War I and II. So kanang World War, actually, ang uban is just, I think, no, there are parts na one of the reasons nga ng World War is it's because of industrialization. Just say, for example, ako nanghimo sa, partly, not purely, but partly, one of the reasons is because of industrialization. So, for example, if I'm the maker of this kind of tank, or this kind of bomb that I have, I should try this one. I should market this one. Ano ba, kung saan ako pagkakwarta aning akong gihimo nga missile nga rin. So, since I na mga countries nga medyo na conflict, maybe I could sell them these products that I have. And for me, I think that's one of the reasons na mga kaning World War I and II. So aside from the conflict that we have initially, ang katong conflict is medyo ni grow because of industrialization. And those mga World War I and II, it really affects the practice of architecture during this time. So there are buildings that were damaged actually during the mga Gothic architecture, mga Romanesque architecture buildings na damaged during the war. And several buildings required to be built after the war, and medyo nagdali-dali na. We don't have that much time to rebuild all those new palaces, buildings, industrial buildings. So what they did is unsay ilahang pinaka-simple form. So that also led to modernism. And another one, new typologies or typologies such as railway stations. So, since na may mga trains, no? We have the department stores because again, no, nisugod na ang industrialization. We have these offices, apartments, factories, dams, and airports. And lastly, we have the new clients such as municipalities, cooperatives, institutions, and social groups. So what are these materials there? No? So we're talking about new materials na na-discover. But actually, these three materials led to modernism. Some of these were invented dugay na. So first, we have this glass. Actually, glass was invented during the Egyptian era. So that's 3,500 BC or before Christ. Uh, Although it was not fully used during that time, nagamit na siya during, na highly used na siya during the Gothic architecture, but this type of materials also one of the materials that is highly used in modern architecture. And another material that we have is the concrete. So actually concrete was discovered way before, but it was fully utilized by the Romans. Although before na yung mga na-discover of concrete, but wala nila na fully utilized, but concrete was fully discovered, utilized by the Romans or during the Roman architecture. So these two exist before the modern architecture. But what material that actually led into modern architecture is this one, the steel. So the steel invented in 1855. So si Henry Bessemer ang medyo nakastart ng paghimo sa steel. So if you would ask, sir, wala day steel before, so yun sa man na pag-create tong mga buildings nila nga naay mga glass or buildings during the Gothic architecture nga naay mga stained glass and then naay nag-support nila. Actually, that is not steel. That is iron. Iron is different from steel. So, sa may naka-different. Iron is malleable. Meaning ng malleable is pwede mo siya i-bend into any form. That is why nasa yung mga rose window, they have this very artistic na flamboyant style of tracery. It's because the material they're using is iron, and iron is malleable. Pwede mo siya i-bend. Bantay mo na mga gate nga, daghang kay mga pa-circle-circle, and then daghang kay mga flower. Di ka pwede ka gamit og steel ana niya. You can use iron or specifically wrought iron, WROUGHT. So steel is a sturdy material, way sa building tech pa ni siya nga term, way ang term niya is kanang mas kusgan siya. Strength, in terms of strength, it's of its class, no? Mas high quality in terms of its strength. Why? Iron plus carbon is actually makes it steel. There's an added part which is the carbon na may nagpa-strengthen atong iron, which makes it now steel. So these three materials right here are the reasons why na ni-exist ang modern architecture. So these three basic materials, concrete, glass, and steel, ni-exist ang mga designs in modern architecture. So later on, we will expound on that idea. And in terms of industrial revolution, we have this start of motor age. So we have the invention of steam engine, which is around 16th, 17th century. So meaning ng steam engine is nagsugod ng katong mga steam engine ng mga trains. So meaning they required during this time, since na-invent naman siya, so another type of building is required, which is the railway station. So more na siya ito makita later on. And actually, invention of car also is one of the reasons why it leads into this industrial revolution and leads to modernism. So nag-invent day sa car or nag-patent sa first invented car is si Carl Benz, which is Mosa na siya owner or siya mo'y main owner sa Mercedes-Benz. So si Carl Benz in 1896. So from that industrial revolution and those invention of steel, it leads to creation of new building designs such as this one. So this is the Crystal Palace in 1851 by Joseph Paxton. So remember this before when we discussed the buildings and the building types, wala pa yung mga architects. So this time around in history of architecture for modern architecture, nanay mga architects. So here, the Crystal Palace designed by Joseph Paxton in 1851. Actually, this one, ang story behind any Crystal Palace is there's an exhibition. So meaning na is you have to market your product, you market your design. So mag-build ka og structure. So this structure is actually built for a certain exhibition, and then hundreds, thousands, I think millions of people were gathered here within the building. And after that, after pila ka years or months, ilang i-demolish ang building. So sayang, no? Nindot ang takay nga building and then demolish na. It's because it's not designed nga permanent. It's just for an exhibition. Like you have to market your product. For example, product na steel, so you have to market it. So after siguro months or years, you have to demolish it. So what happens in Crystal Palace is na nindutan sila sa Crystal Palace. So still gi-demolished, but it was transferred into a different location. And then when they transferred it into a different location, wala nila na fully transferred ang structure, and at the same time nasunog ang structure. So it's kind of sad. Wala na siya in real life, or wala na di nakakita og Crystal Palace in actual setting. And nakoy nakitaan sa internet in website na Behance. They recreated or ilang gi-rendered ang Crystal Palace by Joseph Paxton. So ang nag-render niya si kaning nasa ubos na, so si Angela Maria. So it looks like that day, no? Ang Crystal Palace nowadays, if ever ipadayon siya tukod or gitukod siya balik. So it looks like that. Again, the designer is Joseph Paxton. So this is the building that really started the modern architecture. But from here, it started na all of the materials used here is the three materials that we've discussed: concrete, glass, and steel. So concrete, glass, and steel. Wala na sila nagamit og bricks, wala sila nagamit og stone. So it's purely concrete, glass, and steel. So with that three materials, you can create a building way high enough, big enough. So okay sa day siya. So if you notice, there are some glimpses of the old styles. Kita nimo, di ba? Right here. Although it's made of steel, made of glass roofing, but the way it is designed is actually a barrel vault. Naka-barrel vault yapon siya. So there's this influence from the previous architectural styles, but what they did is they've incorporated new materials wherein it becomes now a modern design or modern architecture. And if you go through here, if we zoom a little bit on that part, that's actually a rose window. If you notice, that's actually a rose window or wheel window. So again, napagya po influence from the previous architectural styles, but the way they applied it is they applied it in a modern way. So again, no, nasunog ni siya, gi-transferred, so dili ni siya makita nga building. But it's actually a highlight during the early modern architecture. So another example, or going back into the invention of steel, I think you're very familiar with this building, di ba? So I don't know if napabay wala kailan nga building, but I think All of us here are very familiar with that building, which is the Eiffel Tower in 1887 by Gustave Eiffel. So this Eiffel Tower is actually an exhibition or exposition, ilang terms ako ng exposition. So si Gustave Eiffel, the designer of this tower, is actually an owner of a steel factory. So engineer siya, actually di siya architect, no? Engineer siya, and then he's an owner of a steel factory, and there is this exposition in Paris, France, and invited siya na pwede siya maka-create o certain structure lang, murag any structure that will represent his company as a steel producer, steel manufacturer. So mo na iyang gi-create, no? The Eiffel Tower. So since exposition man siya or exhibition man siya, after pila ka months, they tried to demolish this structure. Kay, syempre, it's the same way that what Crystal Palace is, kanang na-experience, after pila ka months, after the exhibition, after pila ka thousands or millions of people will go into that place, look into your structure, and then probably buy, if ever na okayhan sila sa imong design and sa imong product, probably buy your product sa imong steel. After that, pwede na gubon imong structure. So si Eiffel Tower is hapit na gid siya gubon, but there's that certain murag group of people that they said nga dapat i-retain na ni siya nga structure because this time this structure actually became the landmark na sa Paris. Kay it's because of its height and so on and so forth. And gladly ilan ang gihimo kay if wala pa sayang wala tayong mga Eiffel Tower karon sa France, no? So this is Gustave Eiffel, no? The designer of that Eiffel Tower, which is actually an engineer. Kay ang iyahang again, no, ang iyahang negosyo or ang iyahang brand nga gi-cater is pag-create, pag-manufacture og steel. So aside from that, in modern architecture, these developments, katong invention of steel, katong mga gipanghimo nila ni Gustave Eiffel, gipanghimo nila ni Joseph Paxton, those developments reach America. Kato siya nga mga ideas nga use of steel and so on and so forth, niabot siya og US. And this time around, led to the first steel-framed skyscraper, which is before the what you call the home insurance building in Chicago. So mo ni siya, no? It's a first steel-framed skyscraper. So ang gigamit na kay steel na. And then it was built in 1884 by architect William LeBaron Jenney, and it is considered one of the world's first skyscrapers and one of the first high-rise building that used a steel frame structure. Although di makita nimo, di ba, because ang iyang steel is nasa iyang pinaka inner portion. On the outer side, it is cladded with bricks. It is painted with this color and ornament. Nagbutang gyapon sila ornament because if you notice, they are still influenced by Renaissance architecture. So here makita nimo nagyapon yung mga arc. Here nagyapon sila yung mga nakaparapet wall, and then you have here the kanang mga cornices and the moldings right here. So they have these designs that is influenced by the previous style, but at the same time they uses this new material which started the whole early modernism within US and also the same time sa Europe. Although sadly, since apartment man siya during this time or building, kani siyang mga unong ka building, there are 6 buildings here, na demolish ni siya to accommodate a new structure around 1960s. So wala na siya nga building actually. But in history of architecture, it has a certain landmark na nga feel. It's because it is one of the world's first skyscrapers. Okay, so next. So balik ta sa Europe, Glasgow School of Art, which was dated 1909, it's an architectural school. So the designer of this building and also the head of this architectural school is the architect Charles Rene Mackintosh. So again, no, sa Glasgow School of Art, it's an architectural school, and ang building mismo is designed by Charles Rene Mackintosh. So within that time of early modernism in Europe, or at the end of the 19th century, a few architects began to challenge the traditional neoclassical styles that dominated architecture in Europe and in the United States. So we have these movements right here, arts and crafts movement, and we have the Art Nouveau. So nanay duha ka styles, no? During the early modernism in Europe, we have these two distinguished styles. We have these arts and crafts and also the Art Nouveau. So for the arts and crafts movement, it's a movement that originated in England, 1860, as a reaction against poor quality mass-produced goods, conceiving craft and decoration as a single entity in the handcrafting of both utilitarian and decorative objects. So later on, makita nato sa ilahang examples. So this definition right here is from the Visual Dictionary of Architecture by Dick Kitching, kanisa ng duha. For Art Nouveau, then, the definition from Visual Dictionary of Architecture is, it is a style of fine and applied art current in the late 19th and early 20th century, characterized by fluid, undulating motifs often derived from natural forms. So arts and crafts movement, and then nasay gitawag na tong Art Nouveau. So for the arts and crafts movement, we have this example right here, which is gitawag siya og Red House. So if you try to search the house, this one, the Red House, ang makita nga designer usually is si Philip Webb, but actually it's a combined design by William Morris and Philip Webb. So silang duha ang architect. So unsa may naka-special aning Red House? So Red House is actually one of the best example for arts and crafts movement. So this movement highly emphasized primitive, vernacular forms over the revivalism popular at the time, focused on the democratic and spiritual aspects of architecture, and in many ways laid the foundations for the development of modernism. So the term that we can highly use in this type of movement, or the art and crafts movement, is they design their buildings, their houses, based on their needs, not based on what style they can revive or they can copy. Kaya nga naman, after the Renaissance architecture, we have these small styles of architecture, like for example, the Baroque, and we have this mga revival of old styles. We have the Neo-Romanesque or Romanesque revival. We have the Neo-Gothic or the Gothic revival. So all of these designs, or all of these small architectural styles that emerged in between modernism and Renaissance architecture, are actually copying what is the design of the previous styles. Wala kopyawan nimo, like himo ko structure and then ganahan ko ang design kay parehaan niya, so copying that design and then apply na ko sa akong building. This time around in arts and crafts movement, it's based on the utilitarian, meaning what is the use of that building is you design based on that idea. So for example, house, and then you're located in, for example, this one, the Red House, you're located in a kind of mag-snow nga area. So you have to build your roof steep enough na tagak sa snow, ma-slide ra ang snow. So, yan na siya. The houses or the structures during the arts and crafts movement are well designed based on its use. So actually, diha na siya nagsugod. Although right now, makaingon ta nga, I think basic man siguro na, sir, no? But before, it's not that way. Before, when you design a certain palace or palazzo, there's always that basic look of that kind of building. If you design it in a way na Gothic siya or Neo-Gothic, there's a basic look sa nga pwede nimo siya i-copy. But this time around, mo ni siya ang nag-start sa modernism. And I think it is the same idea that we're using right now, the utilitarian design. Design your space, design your structure on what it is used for. Kaya syempre, ang mo experience, ang mo gamit ang mga structure is just most na ilahang need. So the house was built of deep red brick laid in the English bond. So it had 2 stories and was L-shaped. The roof was steeped with tall chimney stacks. And then we have the dark red tiles covered the floor. So I have another slides nga nani siya interior pictures pero wala na ko gi-appeal, no? Para ma-shorten ang ato ang actually medyo daghan pa kay kog slides. Hopefully if okay rin you guys, we could extend a little bit later siguro just to finish the whole slides that I prepared for modern architecture. So another example of arts and crafts movement is this one, ang balay ni Frank Lloyd Wright. So I think very familiar sa inyo, ano, si Frank Lloyd Wright. Mo na iyang balay and most ni iyang studio. So in terms of arts and crafts movement, in terms of the way si Frank Lloyd Wright na gidesign niya siya na structure, here we have this parts right here, structural authenticity. So kung say ang beam, mo sa na iyang ipakita nga beam. If unsa iyang rafter, mo sa na iyang ipakita nga rafter. It's not the same with the way we design right now nga natay rafters atong roof, butang pa atong cover, and then ito pa i-cladding, i-ceiling para natay murag nindot nga surface. During the arts and crafts movement, if unsay imong structural nga gigamit, mo na siya ipakita. Dili na siya tabunan pa or pintalan pa. Mo na siya imong ipakita. So if you're using bricks for your walls, mo na siya imong ipakita. Simplicity, so in terms of floor plan, more into open planning, wherein in terms of use, if ever na kay change later on, it would be easy to interchange spaces. And they also use native materials such as wood. They also have these natural influences such as earth tones, wood grain. And we have this emphasis on home life. Medyo ano na siya, considered na siya nga homey effect. So makita niyo nanay siya pagka-homey effect. Unlike those designs before, which is like for example the Gothic, the Romanesque, and other structures before na, or the palaces, no, the palazzos, it's not that homey effect. Going into Art Nouveau, actually ang term na Art Nouveau is a French term, but the meaning of that nouveau is newly arrived or newly developed art. Or murag ang art na mo'y nahimo na to karon. So that's what you mean by Art Nouveau. Medyo char lang paminawan ng nouveau because it's a French term. But this Art Nouveau, it differs from every area. Maraglahi siya. If you called Art Nouveau in Italy, lahi siya name. In Germany, lahi siya. So here, we have style liberty. So the Italian version of Art Nouveau. We have secession. Di ko kalimutan yung secession because di gawas ni siya sa among board exam, and I'm so happy kay halos everyday magsigar ako story of secession. Unsa na secession? Art Nouveau, secession. And then finally ni gawas sa board exam, so I'm so happy with that. So secession is an Austrian version of Art Nouveau. So Austria, no? And then we have Modernismo, which is the Spanish, which is particularly in Catalan. So Catalan is a space is a place in Spain. And then lastly, we have the Jugendstil, which is the German Art Nouveau. So we have four, no? Style Liberty, we have Secession in Austria, we have Modernismo in Spain, we have Jugendstil in German. So na siya upat ka buok style of Art Nouveau. But there are other Art Nouveau. If you would research more on Art Nouveau, there are Art Nouveau in Portugal, there are Art Nouveau in other areas also, pero nasa na siya ilang own name. But this four actually mo na siya pinaka main Art Nouveau styles na daghan siyang mga examples and really made an impact in the history of architecture. So let's start with Style Liberty. So in Style Liberty, we have these two examples, the Casa Galimberte by Giovanni Battista Bossi. So if you notice, dili na siya dili na siya graffiti, dili na siya ingon nga kanang nag-vandalize sa ilahang building. It's part of their art. So this again, no, Art Nouveau is a newly arrived, newly developed art. So this time around, I think they're quite more sila ni adjust sa modernism na super lang kanang simple na design. So they've added this ornaments right here. Same with this one, the Palazzo Castiglione in Milan by Giuseppe Sommaruga. So they've added this arts right here as the ornaments. But the way they applied their other designs, it's in modern manner. Like for example, this one, no? This type of windows, you cannot see these windows before. No, wala na siya nga type of windows. This one, the sliding and so on and so forth. Same with this, the doors that they have, dili ni sila same before. In Secession, so yung ani ang mga design, no? Sorry na copy paste na ko ang isa ka nga rin. We have this gitawag og Secession building in all brick Austria. So if you notice this building right here, and then ikalit lang nailingin des taas na dome, and then supported or upat ka book na nasa iyang side. Okay, so it's kind of weird actually for me. Mga design during the Art Nouveau is medyo they follow this modernism style, but they've added unsay feel nila nga murag ilang gipagawas ilang pagka-artistic side. So this one, for example, the Church of Saint Leopold by Otto Wagner. So it's a simple building right here. Kita nimo, clean lines, but inigabot this taas, the dome. What happened to the dome? Green, yellow, and so on and so forth. So muna siya yung mga styles during the Art Nouveau. They followed this modernism, early modernism movement, but at the same time, they included their own artistic value, or they included this own artistic styles to their buildings. And another example for the Secession is this one, no, the Karlsplatz station of the Vienna by Otto Wagner gyapon na siya. So iningsod mo ani padung kas ubos, train station sa ubos. So mo na ilang train station na. Although currently wala na siya gigamit, but it's one of the historical buildings in Austria. So I think nibalik ra ni siya, no. So this time around, Modernismo, if we talk about Art Nouveau, Modernismo, there's no other architect that we can give as an example other than Antoni Gaudi. So again, no, if we talk about Art Nouveau, Modernismo in Spain, no other architect can be as a good example other than Antoni Gaudi. So here we have the Casa Batlló. So it's actually an apartment building. And then here, another example, we have the Casa Mila by Antoni Gaudi. So both of these structures right here are by Anthony Gaudi. So if you notice, sa mga buildings ni Anthony Gaudi, medyo weird, di ba? Medyo it 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 follows or na siya mga curvilinear. I think wala siya building na straight. All buildings of Anthony Gaudi is curvilinear, naka-curve tanan. So let's check for other examples. So we have right here, actually this one, Casa Vicens, is actually the first work of Anthony Gaudi. So if you would notice, it's kind of linear in terms of form. But later on, na pagka-design na ni Gaudi sa iyang mga spaces or sa iyang mga buildings, mostly curvilinear in terms of styles. So this time around, first building niya or first architectural work niya, still you can see the artwork or the art of Anthony Gaudi. And this one, I can't forget this Park Güell right here because nigawas sa among board exam and I don't know o kaila kong Anthony Gaudi but I don't know about Park Güell. So wala ko ka-answer ni. I think wrong ko ani nga part. So Park Güell is actually designed by Anthony Gaudi. So right now, it is used as a park. So from the term it's a Park Güell. No? But before, it's actually a apartment building. But I think wala na siya na monetize, no? Murag walay ni abang sa ilahang housing, sa ilahang apartment buildings. And some of them were demolished. And right now, only 3 structures remain, and it is used as a park, as a ano na siya, murag area nga ngadto mag-meet ang mga tao. It's an open space, and then it's also a landmark in that area, murag a tourist attraction in that area. Okay, so if you look at the aerial view of that structure, it looks like this. So mo ni siya ang Park Güell. So actually ang mga structure na katong kauban sa Park Güell is this one. Pero wala na demolish lang uban. Okay, so we'll have our 5-minute break. 5-minute break lang siguro, and then we'll be back at around 6:45 to continue our discussion. Okay? So if you have questions, just let me know. Okay, so while waiting for the others, no? I'd just like to ask, I think, kaila ba mo ni Anthony Gaudi? Kasi may kaila na ni Anthony Gaudi nga rin. Familiar mo?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good, no? Ah, actually, isa siya sa mga architect na ganahan ko sa iyang prinsipyo. Ganahan ko sa iyang principles. And also one of the highlights sa iyang design is actually this one. I think very familiar ang tanan, no? This is the Sagrada Familia by Anthony Gaudi. And right now, wala pa rin siya nahuman nga structure. Nindot kay pagkakuha di siya nga picture. I really like this picture na ipina rainbow nga picture. So, kani siya nga structure designed by Anthony Gaudi mo ni highlight sa iyang career. So, honestly or actually, nga rin siya namatay si Anthony Gaudi. Literally namatay gid siya within sa vicinity sa iyang structure kay one day daw sa sobra niya ka addicted sa iyang design, sobra niya ka super ganahan kaysa sa iyang design. One day, one early morning, while naglakaw siya, nagtanaw sa iyang structure, nagyangod-yangod siya. Wala siya kabantay nga wala nila siya sa sidewalk. And then naligsan siya. Naligsan si Anthony Gaudi. So sadly, wala na human ang structure during the time of Anthony Gaudi, and this building also experienced a lot of challenges such as niagi og war, naigo, nasunog, but gladly there's this group of architects that study, research about the works of Gaudi kay although nasunog ang mga drawings ni Gaudi, which is very very detailed. If you notice the design of Gaudi, it's kinda curvilinear. All of these are curved. Wala kayo makita nga straight lines, but these drawings of Gaudi or these designs of Gaudi is drawn manually with with dimensions and with computations. Like ang pag-curve ano niya na radius kay before I think na the way design Gaudi is kanang bahala na unsay mo gawas nga itsura no, like sige pag-mold lang diha og something na circular in form, and then let's try to check in actual if unsay forma, and then nga ta mo adjust actual. But no, it's not that way. Gaudi really create the details in each and every part, especially like for this one, no? This one right here, or this part sa iyang column. Every part of that is being drawn by Gaudi. Like the radius, the dimension, naka-drawing na siya. No? So yung anak ka amazing si Anthony Gaudi. So this one, Monish the Anthony Gaudi, and this one is the architect that the main architect that studied the works of Gaudi and implemented it in actual na. So this Sagrada Familia is not yet finished. Mahuman siya by 2026, which is 2026, 300 years since namatay si Gaudi. 2026. 300 years. Wait lang ha. I'll think it through. 17, 18, 19. Yeah, 300 years since namatay si Gaudi. So muna ilahang target na mahuman ni siya by 2026. So right now, ongoing construction sila of this structure. And if you notice, the design of Gaudi is actually a nature-like design. They said that si Gaudi, when he designed the structure, he really based it in nature. So that is why ang iyahang quote is, nothing is art if it does not come from nature. So mo na iyahang gisulti, no? Nothing is art if it does not come from nature. So going back on that interior view of the Sagrada Familia, it's actually based on nature. So those columns right there represents the trunk of a tree. Then if you notice, it branches out right here, ang column. But this column here are structural columns na siya carrying a load. It's not just an ornamentation. It's a structural column, and if you notice the ceilings, the vaultings here, it's not fan vault, it's not barrel vault, it's not rib vault, but it's a new type of vault wherein it represents a certain part of the nature, which is in this time around, mura siya og mga dahon sa kaning kahoy. So this is the nave portion of the church. So siguro ini musod ka diha nga church na instead of maminaw kag maayo sa, if you're an architect siguro, and then if instead of maminaw ka sa wali sa pare, I think was kag yangod-yangod noon. Kanindot aning design ni Gaudi. But kudos to this architect actually. Jordi Fowley. Ang yang name is Jordi Fowley. Jordi, Gordi, Jordi, Fauli. Hopefully mabasa rin yan. I'm using the sa laptop bitaw nga touchpad. Jordi Fowley. So ano ni siya, nag-start ni siya sa Sagrada Familia around 1990s, studying all the works of Gaudi, studying all the remaining drawings of Gaudi. And then before ano pa lang siya, murag kanang di siya ingon ng head architect, but starting 2012 siya na ang head architect of this structure right now. So another term or another quote from Gaudi. So again, no, in modern architecture, daghan ng mga ingani, and actually manggawas na siya sa mga board exam kani mga ingani mga quote like unsay mga gipang storya before or sa mga sikat or what we call the star architects or starchitects. So Gaudi also said that there are no straight lines or sharp corners in nature. Therefore, buildings must have no straight lines or sharp corners. So ingana siya ka nature lover. So which is makita man sa iyang design. And another quote or term na introduce ni Gaudi is the straight line belongs to man, the curved line belongs to God. So that means all works of Gaudi are for iyang design in a way nga for God. So currently, mo na siya, no? 2020 na siyang picture. One of the towers here is almost done. The main tower, the central tower is layo pa kay tinuod for me, ha. Layo pa tinuod kay taas pa ni siya. This is the central tower that they need to finish by 2026. Ang kaning tower nga kani siya is this one. And nasa na siya ka-partner nga other tower, which is this tower right here. Okay, so that's the Sagrada Familia. Actually, I have another presentation about the works of Gaudi, but I think it would take a lot of 1 hour sa siguro pag-discuss all the works of Gaudi. So I'll just share it to you guys for your future reference. So going back to the Art Nouveau, so balik ta sa Art Nouveau. So Jugendstil is an Art Nouveau in Germany. So one of the notable architects during that time is Peter Behrens. So mo ni iyang design, no, si Peter Behrens, the house of architect by Peter Behrens. And another building which is one of the new structures or type of buildings emerged during the modern architecture is this one, the Turbine Factory by Peter Behrens. So again, no, bago ni siya nga type of building before, di ka kitag factory. So it emerges during the industrialization. So kanang mga factory buildings nga rin na siya nag-start during the modern architecture, modern era. So I remember this one, isa ni sa mga buildings nga gipa-render na mo during our Vistec days, Vistec 2. And medyo challenge kay okay ako ang pag-render sa building pero bati kay akong car distorted daw ang maestro. So gamay ko grado. So okay lang. Sige. So ana si Peter Behrens that design is not about decorating functional forms. It is about creating forms that accord with the character of the object and that show new technologies to advantage. So medyo taas-taas na yung quote but kindly take note of this because some of these quotes were actually mo gawas sa for exam. No? Medyo ano lang, depende kung sa ilang feeling ipagawas nga quotation. So again, no, design is not about decorating functional forms. It is about creating forms that accord with the character of the object that show new technologies to advantage. Next, this term, early modernism in Europe, which is what we call the Bauhaus. So I think some of you are already familiar with this, but let's just read this one. The Bauhaus, or ang iyang full term, which is what we call the Staatliches Bauhaus, is a German art school operational from 1919 to 1933 that combined crafts and fine arts. So it's an architecture school. So the school became famous for its approach to design, which attempted to unify the principles of mass production with individual artistic vision and strove to combine aesthetics with everyday function. So the Bauhaus was founded by architect Walter Gropius. So matik din ano, basta maingon mo Bauhaus, automatic Walter Gropius gyud. There's no other architect na pwede nimo i-associate sa Bauhaus kundi si Walter Gropius. So this school is actually very influential not just in architecture but also in other arts like graphic design, interior design, industrial design, and also at the same time the typography. Okay, so unsa may forma ng Bauhaus? I think we're very familiar with this building. Looks like this, no? So Bauhaus designed by Walter Gropius, and actually napoy gipang design si Walter Gropius in the US, which is kaning Harvard Graduate Center. So if you notice the design ni Walter Gropius, it's the kind opposite of what Art Nouveau is designing. So in modernism under Bauhaus, it's very more into functionality. Like for example, if you need a window for your school, you don't need any ornaments. You don't need any for example, moldings. You don't need any decorations in your structure. It's just what you need is what you will get here in this design. So this is the actual, for me, this is the actual start of modernism in Europe. Those other modernisms they've started it in a way, but still napakay makita nga artistic, although this is also artistic, but in a way that they designed this for utilitarian needs, for what it is used for. So Walter Gropius, mo na si Walter Gropius, no? So uso sa una magpa-picture o ka ng mga pina-serious mode. So siguro if granted mo or na mo yung mga na-create nga mga quote, pwede mo pa-picture daan, niya black and white, then himo mo gyani. I think pwede sa na siya. So here, Walter Gropius says, architecture begins where engineering ends. Would you agree with this? If I may ask someone, would you agree with this? Architecture begins where engineering ends. Kitsa may ganahan mo mo share sa ilahang reaction on this quote by Walter Gropius. Ningon si Walter Gropius nga architecture begins ay wala di ko nag-on ng camera. Architecture begins where engineering ends. So would you agree with this? Ako, I would agree with this. Personally, I would agree with this. Architecture begins where engineering ends. But it's actually, it's not that literally, but for me, architecture is the time na gigamit na imong structure. But we designed it in advance. Sir, libog lagi yung explanation, sir. Okay, balik na to ha. From the term na, from the quote ni Walter Gropius na architecture begins where engineering ends. Engineering is the process of that time nga gi-construct imong building ng mga foundation, tanan-tanan pag-attach sa mga structural nimo nga mga components and pag-complete sa imong building. All of the engineering is there. Civil engineering, electrical, mechanical, tanan-tanan. After that, diha na mag-start ang architecture. Anong diha man na mag-start ang architecture? After ma-construct imong building, that's the time nga musulod ang mga user. Musulod ang mogamit. And at that time nga musulod na ang mga mogamit, that's the time that they can experience the space that you designed way ahead. So kita din nga architects are actually murag ka ng mga mananagan ba, or in another point or another term is we get the idea, or we designed the user experience way before na gigamit na nila nga space. But that architecture ato na siyang gi-design in advance, but that actually begins once naa na ang mupuyo. So hopefully nasabtan na, no? Architecture begins where engineering ends. That architecture means is the user experience, or the experience of the people that will use that structure. Mo na siya ang architecture para ni Walter Gropius. So another sikat nga architect during this time around, during the Bauhaus movement, is we have Adolf Meyer and Walter Gropius. So this building right here, it's a factory. So also again, also that time ang mga factory. So si Adolf Meyer and also si Walter Gropius ang nag-design ani niya. So mao ni si Adolf Meyer. Careful if mag-search mo og Adolf Meyer in internet, na another Adolf Meyer which is a psychiatrist. So type niyo Adolf Meyer and then architect. And another sikat na architect during the early modernism in Europe is Le Corbusier. So si Le Corbusier, in collaboration with this artist right here, started the term purism. So na sila get start nga movement na, which what they call purism. So the code of purist rules would be to refine and simplify design, dispensing with ornamentation. So same gyapon, no? Same idea with the modern architecture. Ilang simplify, refine all of the areas of their designs wherein ilang gitanggal, no? Dispensing the ornamentation. So naibuk si Le Corbusier, kay gitawag og towards a new architecture. So nangadto ang iyang mga discussions about how they come up with those designs, and nangadto ang kaning a home, gitawag niya a home is a machine to be lived in. Okay, so design furniture at the same time during the purism or purist style. Design furniture that was lines are clean, straight, and precise. The golden ratio was the ideal shape, and that is reflected in their work. So I think you're very familiar with the golden ratio, no? The Fibonacci series, the 1, 1, 2, 3. Kanang mo forma og pa, I don't know if familiar mo kanang mo forma og panana. That's the golden ratio. I think that the golden ratio is 1.6 something, 1.617 man yata to. That's the value of the golden ratio. Are you familiar with this one, guys? Kaning golden ratio of the golden rectangle. So yeah, very good. No, if na mga familiar, that's good. Okay. So quote ni Le Corbusier, it says here, architecture is the masterly correct and magnificent play of masses brought together in light. So our eyes are made to see forms in light. Light and shade reveal these forms. So hindi siya light actually. No? So balik tayo. Architecture is the masterly correct and magnificent play of masses brought together in light. So later on, we'll have an example that best describes this coat right here. And one of the important or known building of Le Corbusier is this one, the Villa Savoy. And please note on this 5 points of architecture because it's very important and usually magawa sa board exam. So ang idea ni Le Corbusier in 5 points of architecture is you have a flat roof. Mo na iyang para ni Le Corbusier mo na iyang what defines architecture. When you design of architecture, you have to follow or you have to be within this 5 points of architecture. So you have a flat roof. You have a free facade. This one right here, a free facade. You have a open floor plan or kanang wala kay distinguished area o para asa para unsa. So it's an open plan. You design it with pilotis or pilotis. So naka stilts sa Pinoy architecture pa na or Filipino architecture in that is naka stilts. So that's the pilotis. And you have the ribbon windows. So this is what you call the windows or the ribbon windows. So you have the flat roof. You have the facade, free facade. Free facade is you can see a certain part wherein mo na focal points yung building. So it's just a flat facade, free facade. And then you have the ribbon windows. Ribbon windows means from one end up to another end is a straight window. And then you have here the pilotis or the pilotis, which is this stilts right here that elevated your structure. So the main, this is a house actually, no, this is a house. So the main areas of that house is actually this on the second floor. So this part right here, the bottom part are just storages and other support spaces. But the main, the bedroom, the living area, the dining kitchen, is this as the second floor. So naka-elevate ang iyang house. And naka-open plan na siya, meaning there's no distinguished area for dining. There's no distinguished area for living. So, pwede mo i-interchange and so on and so forth. So, the roof, again, no? The roof, pwede siya magamit as recreational area at the same time, shelter and also garden. So, the facade is a free facade. What applies to the floor plan also applies to the facade itself. So, windows or the horizontal windows or what we call the ribbon windows. The pilotis, and the free plan or the floor plan. So here, going back to that quote of Le Corbusier, it's actually best described here sa iyang idea sa Ronchamp Chapel. So this is the chapel. Actually, ang full name niya is Notre Dame du Haut in Ronchamp. Ronchamp is a place, no? So gitawag na siya Ronchamp Chapel because there are a lot of Notre Dame na mga structures or mga buildings. So here, makita niyo mo, sir, marag simple naman kanya sa building and then weird, forma weird, so marag may kalo, di ba? But actually, what Le Corbusier would want to achieve is not highly on the exterior but mostly on the interior. So, nga na iya, no? The light, if you notice, if you go back sa iyang architecture is the masterly, correct, and magnificent play of masses brought together in light. So notice here how he used the light as a design feature in that structure. So na din siya slit gamay iyang roofing natin. This roofing does not directly attach to that wall. It's actually there's a space right here nga mura nagutaw ang imong roofing, which gives a feeling of gaan bitaw, no? Gaan siya. Because there's that light that will be shown right here. So nasa mga different kinds of openings that can be a source of light like that. So yung ano, mura siya kanang magical, playful of light. So nigamit siya og mga stained glass or mga colored glass so that those light nga mo go inside sa iyang structure, sa iyang chapel is in different colors. So, pero inga nilang kasimple na iyang altar. Okay. So that's modernism for Le Corbusier. So another structures of Le Corbusier is we have this Unite de Habitation. So one of the early buildings na high-rise apartment. So before before wala pa yung mga high-rise apartments. So one of the early structures that designed high-rise apartments are si Le Corbusier. So iya ding tinuod nga pangan kay si Charles Edward Jenneret. Charles Edward Jenneret. So take note of this, no? Mo na iyang true name. Kung ano na iya ka ng char na iyang Le Corbusier. Ano na siya ka ng pseudonym. But the true name, yung tinuod nga pangan is Charles Edward Jenneret. So this one, it's Unite de Habitation in France. I think nasa upat kabuk building nga Unite de Habitation. This one is in Berlin. So nakakuha siya nindot na client, no, nga nagtukod in other areas of Europe. I think there are other two, but more or less the same form, the same size. So here, some of the it's a modernist residential housing designed by Le Corbusier or Charles Edward Jenneret in collaboration with artist painter Nadir Alfonso. So kani mga nag-design ning mga yellow, red, ideas of Nadir Alfonso. So this concept formed the basis of several housing developments designed by him throughout Europe. So before medyo daghang tawo ani, but right now I think gamay na lang na ang ni gamit ani niya. But still it's one of the historical landmarks in France and also in Berlin. Okay, so medyo nahuman na ta sa Europe. Now we'll go to America. No? So early modernism in America. So early modernism in America starts with this person right here. So kinsa na siya? Siya si Louis Sullivan. So Louis Sullivan is the father of modernism, the father of skyscrapers, an influential architect of the Chicago School. So Chicago School is just muna siya, if Bauhaus sa Europe, Chicago School sa US. So murag mo na sila kuan before, murag magkatapat na mga schools. And also a mentor to Frank Lloyd Wright. So siya boss ni Frank Lloyd Wright actually. And coined the term form follows function. So I think you're very familiar with the term form follows function. Sa among time overly used ni siya nga term form follows function, akong concept form follows function. So actually ang nag-sulti niya is si Louis Sullivan. So one of the examples of works of Louis Sullivan is we have the Chicago Stock Exchange building. So although constructed in 1893, na-demolish siya by 1972. And if you notice, it's just the same or more or less the same design with the atong architect na discussed before. Steel structure and high-rise buildings, Japan siya. And the other buildings na sikat si Louis Sullivan is the Wainwright Building in St. Louis, USA. Okay, nga na siya, no? So, during the time of Louis Sullivan, siya ang nag-start aning mga design sa offices. Like, na yung mga kani siyang elevator lobby, and then na yung mga office spaces right here. Actually, wala sila I think this part right here is the fire exit. Then mga office spaces, and then open court right here at the center. So, during this time, si Louis Sullivan ang nag-start ng nga kind of design. The designing of high-rise office buildings. And niingon si Louis Sullivan nga every building is like a person, single and unrepeatable. Maninuod man sa niya na single. Although, ang iyang gimina na niya is the building itself, even though magkaparehag na ang building, that building is like a person, which is every person is not the same. Lahi no, kada tao. Bisan pa o twins mo, there's still some di mo magkapareha. So every building is like a person, single and unrepeatable. The Chicago School of Architecture is also known as commercial style. They promote new technologies of steel frame construction in their commercial buildings. And architects were encouraged to build higher structures because of the escalating land prices. So medyo nagkamahal no ang mga land cost during that time, and medyo nagkadaghan ang tao. So again no, mo na siya ang reason why modern architecture emerged, because of the influx of this group of people, this group of working people na moadto og city and then work within these companies, within these industrial companies. And then these companies would build buildings to cater them into offices, and those lands are really really high kay demand, di ba? Supply, law of supply and demand. So magkamahal ang presyo sa yuta, so they need to build higher and higher. Before, nagpataas lang sila sa ilang building during the Hagia Sophia and the Gothic architecture. Gothic architecture is just the idea of the higher your building is, the closer you are to God. This time around in modern architecture is they build their structure higher because they needed it, because they don't have enough land area to build their structure. So if you notice the difference no of reasoning nganong magpataas sila sa ilang building. So footing or isolated footing supported a skeleton of iron encased masonry. So nag-start na siya during the early modernism. Before, bato lang ilang gamito no, but this time around nigamit na sila og steel no, murag concrete with the steel. They incorporated fireproof floors, numerous fast elevators, and gaslight. And then the traditional masonry wall became curtain walls, full of glass walls and supported by metal skeleton. So ang kanang curtain wall is just a wall. So if mo na imuhang floor to floor no, so mo na imuhang sectional view ni siya ha. If mo na imuhang floor level, this edge, which is mo na imong facade, imo na butangan og full glass. And then i-attach na diyan, na certain attachment. This glass right here, mo na siya gitawag og curtain walls. It's not curtain nga cortina ha, but curtain walls are made of glass that covers the facade of your building. So the architects that are notable during this time, the Chicago School of Architecture, is Dunk Mar Adler, which is partner ni silang duha. Pero minsan magkuyog. O kinsay katong mga buildings na designed ni Louis Sullivan, partner niya si Dunk Mar Adler. We have here si Jenny, katong atong na-discuss before, si William LeBaron Jenny, and Daniel Burnham. I think you're very familiar with Daniel Burnham. So, kinsa man as Daniel Burnham. So, okay. For the characteristics, we have the bold geometric facades. We have the wall surface highlighted with extensive low-relief sculptural ornamentation. Buildings often topped with deep projecting eaves and flat roofs. So, naka-flat roof ang mga building before or during this time around. The multi-story office complex highly regimented into specific zones or ground story, intermediate floors, and attic or roof. And then we have large arc window or vertical strips of windows. We have decorative band. We have plaster-like mullions, and we have projecting eaves. We have high decorated frieze, decorated terracotta spandrels, capital of pilaster strips, foliated and linear enrichments along jambs or entry. So balik ta. Ato na siyang i-discuss later on. This part right here. So bold geometric facades. So in terms of geometry, ano lang na siya, rectilinear, mostly rectilinear. The wall surface highlighted, although during this time modern sila, but they have small sculptural ornamentation. So for example, no, ilahang floor level and then nasa lang makita ang columns, there are sculptural ornamentation. And then, di gamit sila og flat roofs. And then, decorative band, and so on. Windows, large windows, and so on and so forth. So here, so mo siya, no? This part of the structure is actually the curtain wall. Curtain wall, and then mo nila ang main stairs. So larger windows is used. So daylight, they needed daylight in this structures. Kay office buildings man. So aside from using artificial lighting, they also need the natural lighting. So interior walls become thinner, which created more usable floor space. Not the same with previous architectural styles na grabe kabaga ilang walls. Why? They needed those grabe nga mga bato. And this time around, they use steel naman. So steel are way stronger. Stronger siya compared sa mga stones. And then mass production of steel. So mas dali. In terms of construction, mas dali siya. Before, they can construct one floor. I think Chrysler or the Empire State, I think the Empire State Building, they can construct one floor of Empire State Building in 1 week. But dili na siya same sa ato ang gigamit karon no. Before na siya, karaan pa na, I think 1930s, 1920s. Mo na ilahang one of the kanang highlight on that era is with the mass production of steel, dali ang ilang pag-construct sa building. Okay, so speaking of Daniel Burnham, this is one of the best known structure or well-known structure for Daniel Burnham, the Flatiron Building in New York or in Manhattan, New York. So yung nga na siya forma, no? And then triangle siya na plan, and then it's an office building. So in a man's eye view, yung nga na siya forma sa corner. Kay medyo ang iyang property is nasa corner and then patriangular iyang property. So yung nga na siya. And then if you notice, although this is modern architecture, naka-modern na siya, if you notice, there are still ornaments right here. And then we have this decorative band. You notice? And we have these eaves, projecting eaves. Although flat roof na sa taas, but these eaves right here projecting, but still these are these small details, decorative bands, even though modern architecture na siya. So another design of Daniel Burnham. So medyo nagka-tone down na ang mga ornamentation. So this one is the 77 Broadway in New York. And this one is Pennsylvania in Pennsylvania Union Station. So train station na siya. So here is one of the best quote by Daniel Burnham. For me, one of the best quote good from an architect. He said that, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to steer men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realized. Make big plans, aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble, logical diagram once recorded will never die. But long after we are gone, be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-growing insistency." So to each and every one of you guys, make no little plans. No? Dream higher, aim bigger. There's walay sayop ano niya. If you aim higher, aim bigger. So again, no? One of the beautiful quote by Daniel Burnham. And aside from being an architect, si Daniel Burnham during the early modernism is also a well-known urban planner. So actually siya mo'y nag-urban plan sa Manila and Baguio, but wala lang napadayon kay syempre political issues. And if ever napadayon pa, although it would work, I think NCR would really work properly. If you would go deeper later on in your urban planning na subject, ma-realize niyo nga nganong wala na dayon ni siya. And unsa untay advantage if ever na dayon ni siya nga mga projects ni Daniel Burnham. So Baguio and Manila ang iyang urban plan. So aside from Daniel Burnham, one of the sikat, no, the star architects in modernism in America is the student of Louis Sullivan, which is si Frank Lloyd Wright. So also it's the same with Anthony Gaudi. Daghang kay kong slides about Frank Lloyd Wright, but I've toned it down. Although I'm currently around 57 or 60th out of 100, so hopefully we could kind of extend a little bit. I just want to finish these slides that I prepared for you guys. Hopefully okay ra sa inyo. But if you have other Dito gani. If you have other subjects, you can go back onto this recording. But if wala, you could stay a little while. Or if you have other task to do, yeah, you can leave around 7:30. But if pwede, I would like you to uh, kind of share a little of your time for me to finish these discussions right here. So si Frank Lloyd Wright is one of the bugoy-bugoy nga architect nga bugoy-bugoy nga architect under ni Louis Sullivan. So again, no, ang iyang boss si Louis Sullivan, and then ngadto nag apprentice si Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright didn't receive a kanabitang murag literally wala siya ingon nga nakagraduate og certain architecture school. Though he attended in US man god, pwede ka mo attend og kanang each and every class. It's not the same with our education right now here in the Philippines nga. Mo enroll ka, dapat mo enroll yung best architecture and then manon mo from one subject unto the last subject. Sa ilaha is pwede ka mo enroll og art about that thing, then pwede na po ka mo enroll og another art about that one. So inga na sa una before. So Frank Lloyd Wright didn't receive that full architecture degree. Pero ni-study siya og art, ni-study siya og history, ni-study siya more partly ni-study siya og architecture, but he received or he worked under Louis Sullivan. So imagine naman sad, no, imong boss si Louis Sullivan, no, father of modernism, the father of skyscrapers. So imposible sa kay wala kay makatunan. But sa grabe ka busy ni Louis Sullivan, some of the works of Louis Sullivan is actually submarined by Frank Lloyd Wright. Busy kay si Louis Sullivan, di na niya makuha tanan nga clients. Some of the clients were working directly with Frank Lloyd Wright and medyo nag-away ning duha, si Louis Sullivan and si Frank Lloyd Wright. So if you notice, ang mga design ni Frank Lloyd Wright is not clearly based sa design ni Louis Sullivan. Because namo ko tendency, if you apprentice on that certain mentor, on that certain architect, ang imuhang architectural style is medyo madala sad nimo unsay style sa imuhang boss actually. Honestly, yana na siya, no? Mura kag madala sa iyang prinsipyo sa iyang architectural style. But here, medyo they have contradicting ideas actually. So famous si Frank Lloyd Wright sa mga prairie houses. So these are example of prairie houses, the Robbie House, and we have here Harry S. Adams House, no, by Frank Lloyd Wright. Mostly mga examples or mga designs ni Frank Lloyd Wright are houses and nasa siya mga certain buildings, but mostly residential houses iyang mga examples. Pero na yung mga civic buildings like mga libraries, na museums, but mostly residential. So si Frank Lloyd Wright started this organic architecture. Although the organic architecture, pwede sa lato na siya matawag ang kang Anthony Gaudi. But Anthony Gaudi man god is the way he applied nature in his designs is kanang grabe kani mo makita. Muna gitawag na siya og biomimicry, mimicking or copying what is in nature. So ang term na niya is bio and then mimicry. So copying what's the look of nature and applied it to your building. Here in Frank Lloyd Wright, organic architecture siya, but in a way wherein he designed the buildings based on nature, based on its location. So although there are lots of terms right here, but the most important part is this one, no? In organic architecture, which is Frank Lloyd Wright na mga works, he designed the building which is integral to the site. So houses designed to rise up out of the site as it belong. So for example, tagaan kag plate nga naka-slope. If mo design sa Frank Lloyd Wright, designing siya within the slope, dili niya i-flat. Kasoy na mga plate, di ba? Niya tagaan mag plate and then nice slope. And then akapuya aning slope. This man imagine ay flat na lang ni sir. So sa kang Frank Lloyd Wright in organic architecture, designing the structure within the slope itself. and at the same time integral to the environment. If unsay iyahang, for example, asa siya na belong, like it belongs to a forest, belong to a certain area, should be integral to the environment and integral to the individual. So kinsay mo gamit no or sa building itself. And at the same time, integral to materials. So details of the building were the materials themselves. So if nigamit kag bricks, sige, pakita nimo si bricks. If nigamit kag metal, sige, pakita nimo si metal. And the best building describes this organic architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright is the most visited houses in kaning in this modernism era. It's actually this one, The Falling Waters of Frank Lloyd Wright, which is I know inyo na ning di pang imposible nga dili ni ipa-render before sa inyong lower year. I think di pa ano na gini siya. Appeal ni sa inyong mga Vistec no kanang more into sketching. Usually kanigida yan si Falling Waters. So this building is situated right next to a river. So doon siya old river. No? So the way Frank Lloyd Wright designed this is according to nature, designing according to nature. So we have here another pictures. Nga na, no? Imagine living in this house and then maduhog nimo ang kanang pag-splash sa tubig. No? So iyan na ka relaxing. And hopefully dili ni siya pareha sa ato ang mga river nga ining maulan kay tag-awas mo kay tag-kadako no kay medyo delikado, but hopefully this river right here is kanang ano lang maintain ra iyang flow. So if you notice right here, bricks, concrete, steel, so true to its materials or integral to its materials. Bricks, or what we call the terracotta stones. The steels right here, steel and glass, concrete. So the way it's designed is integral to its materials. And another interior views. Medyo blurred ni siya nga picture, pero I just sent this. I think I have 4 slides about Frank Lloyd Wright, and nakuha na ko during my my review days. Okay, so here mo ni ang giingon ni Frank Lloyd Wright. So if you notice before, form follows function is the main quote or the main concept of Louis Sullivan, iyang boss. Pero unsay giingon ni Frank Lloyd Wright? Form follows function that has been misunderstood. Form and function should be one, joined in a spiritual union. So mo ni giingon ni Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, so another architect, sikat nga architect during the modernism in America is Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Si Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. So here, if you notice this structure right here, the Farnsworth House, ngayon open ni mo Lumion na din siya nga structure. Are you familiar with this one, di ba? Farnsworth House. It's one of the buildings, actually international style, gitawag siya international style, designed by Mies van der Rohe. So pwede siya tawagon na daw Mies or Mies. And along with Alvar Aalto, Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius, and Frank Lloyd Wright, he is regarded as one of the pioneers of modernist architecture. So look at that building right here. It will really okay siya in terms of design. If you know this, if you look at this, naka-snow, and also at the same time here during the summer period. And actually this structure right here is ni-follow siya sa 5 points of architecture. So sa tong 5 points of architecture, we have the flat roof, free plan, ribbon windows, we have the free facade, pilotis. So ni-follow ni siya actually. And another building designed by Mies van der Rohe is the Seagram building and also the Highfield House in Baltimore. So notice how simple it is now. Glass and steel on the facade. So it's just a rectangular building, glass and steel. Same with this, glass and steel, and also concrete. Makita niyo mo ang concrete. This one is an apartment, condominiums ni siya. So diri nag-start ang high-rise. Aside from sa mga design ni Le Corbusier or Charles Edward Jenner. This is also another examples of first condominiums designed in Americas. This one, the Highfield House in Baltimore. And also si Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, it's not just designer siya og mga building structure, design sad siya og mga furniture. So this one, the Barcelona chair. So I think you're very familiar with this chair, no? So this chair is designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. And ang iyang quote is very familiar, this one, no? Less is more. Architecture is the will of an epoch translated into space. And lastly, God is in the details. So mo ni ang gipang storya ni Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. If namoy na balaan nga the devil is in the details, that's actually after mas nauna ning kang Ludwig Mies van der Rohe nga quote, God is in the details. Another architect that I really admire is Louis Kahn. So si Louis Kahn is an early modernist architect in the US, but actually he's from Europe. No? He's from, I think, from Europe areas. So ang iyang style sad is brutalism. So brutalism is a style with an emphasis on materials, textures, and construction, producing highly expressive forms. So brutalist architecture is a movement in architecture that flourished from the 1950s to mid-1970s. So raw concrete no ang brutalism. So if namoy makita sa Facebook nga wow, brutalism ning akong design niya kay igor niya pagtalag itong, it's not really brutalism because brutalism is raw concrete. If steel na, steel lagi na siya. So here si Louis Kahn is one of the, for me, one of the best brutalist architects in the world. For me, si Louis Kahn. So here, giingon ni Louis Kahn, the sun never knew how great it was until it hit the side of a building. Oh, okay. And another quote by Louis Kahn here, a great building must begin with the unmeasurable, must go through measurable means when it is being designed, and in the end must be unmeasurable. So this quote here, nani siya meaning actually. I think hopefully na-discuss niyo ni sa inyong theory of architecture, but just to share a little bit on the meaning of this one is, ang building must begin with unmeasurable. Unsa man nga unmeasurable? Those unmeasurable are the needs. So, unsa man nga needs, like for example, tana ka sa imong client, tana ka sa kinsay mo gamit, og what would you like aning a building? And those things are actually unmeasurable. Ngano man unmeasurable nimo? Di nimo na masukod gamit sa imong ruler, gamit sa imong T-square, gamit sa imong metrosan, di nimo na masukod. Those ideas, those kanang ilahang gusto, it's not measurable. It's unmeasurable. But the way you interpret those client needs, those user needs, you interpret that through measurable means. You interpret that through the way you plan your structure. So kuha kag T-square, kuha kag triangular metric scale, drawing ka, that's the measurable means. And in the end, when you construct that building, when the client use that structure, use that building, the way he is very, he appreciates the space, that is also an unmeasurable thing that we can give to our clients. And hopefully happy siya, no? Unmeasurable in a way nga happy ang kliyente sa atong gibuhat. So that's the meaning of this quote actually by Louis Kahn. And hopefully na gets ra. So si Louis Kahn, again, no, brutalist architecture siya, brutalist architect. So yung ana iyang mga structures, one of the best architects that use the term brutalism at the same time, geometric forms. May ka siya muhimog mga geometric forms, circles, triangles, sa panadya, trapezoids. The way Louis Kahn design it is quite good. Imagine this library, no? Although sa gawas simple na siya, but the way it is designed is very iconic landmark, no? Kani siya. I think na ko'y movie nakita na nino nga yung ano, or mo ni siya ang point of view. And another building in Bangladesh. So this is a parliament building, or gitawag na sa Bangladesh og Jatiyo Sangsad Bhavan, or a parliament building. So designed by Louis Kahn. No? So imagine this part, if nakakadali magtanaw, no? The way it is designed, very symmetrical. Although it's asymmetrical, but because of this one and wala siya ngari, but it's very, very balanced right here. And inga na iyahang site. So nito sa guys site nga nakuha actually. Napay water effect right here. And in man's eye view, nga na siya. Na siya water effect, then na siya reflection effect. So notice how good Louis Kahn applies geometry in his buildings. So it is the House of Parliament of Bangladesh. So designed while the country was still part of Pakistan. The complex is one of the largest legislative complexes in the world. So na siya katong open roofing, then na siya inganing design. So the way again, the way the geometry is being applied in this structure, in this building, is really, really good. And ang iyang interior. So the circles, all the circles plus with the beams, no, yung sa niya pag-apply. And to para papakita aning akong background sa aning presentation, this is actually one of Louis Kahn's structure. And then there's a day in a year nga ngari gina mo set ang sun right here, kaning iyang gihimo ngari nga center line right here. So literally na one day in a year nga ngari na mo set ang sun. So inga na siya kamayo mo gamit sa light, inga na siya kamayo mo gamit sa geometry. So this building is actually the Salk Institute. So again, no, ang brutalism uses beton brut. So beton brut, unsa nang beton brut? It's a concrete left in its natural state after formwork is removed, especially when the concrete surface reflects the texture, joints, and fasteners of a board form. So ano siya, pagtanggal sa formworks, wala na siya pintali, wala na siya giplaster. So that means pure concrete gid ni siya. Dili ni siya ingon nga sa HB niya giplasteran. These are pure concrete. Pagtanggal sa formworks, that's it. No more additional plaster, no more additional painting is being done here. So mo na ang mga design ni Louis Kahn. But actually si Louis Kahn is one of the makaluluoy nga architect. Grabe kaluoy nga architect. If makita mo sa iyang biography, no? Siya ang architect na daghan kayong utang. I don't know why, but his projects are quite good, di ba? If you check on the projects of Louis Kahn, nindot yung mga project, dagko yung mga project, but he's really into challenging life si Louis Kahn. The way sa iyang pagka-designer part, maayo siya, but siguro the way na modela siya sa iyang life is not that okay. So for you guys, work and life balance is very important. Our mental health is very important. So you have to balance all things out, no? Actually si Louis Kahn namatay lang siya sa train station. So yan nakaluoy, no? Yan, namatay lang sa train station. Sikat nga architect pero ano lang, namatay sa train station. And then punos utang. Siguro di siya maayo mo bill, di siya maayo mo maningil sa iyang kliyente. Okay? So and siguro medyo na bored na siya sa iyang pagkamaayo mo himo sa iyang mga buildings with all the geometrical shapes. Siguro naglingaw-lingaw lang siya ani. So I think we all know of the concept here. So sige. I'll leave it to you guys so kung sa inyo masulti nga building. But obvious kayo na mata, ilong, baba, no? Mura kag kanon nga building, no? Ini musod ka, no? We're being eaten by this building right here. And another brutalist architects or architecture or architect or examples here is Moshe Safdie. So Habitat 67 is designed by Moshe Safdie. And this one right here, the expansion of the World Holocaust Remembrance Center is designed by Moshe Safdie. So katong Habitat 67, yung nakadaghan iyang itang design. On all of these buildings are pure concrete, walay pintal, tanan, no? Although, basig ipintalan na sa owner because this is an apartment building and all of these apartments are prefabricated. So if na usa ka apartment, patong-patong sa laing apartment and each apartment has an access to a roof garden. So actually, mo ni nakapadaog ni Moshe Safdie sa iyahang pagka-Pritzker Prize awardee. And another example of brutalist or brutalism architect is Tadao Ando. So this is the Church of Light by Tadao Ando. So si Tadao Ando is architect sa umaga, boxidor sa gabi. Actually, boxidor siya, boxer siya during the younger days. And then siguro nakarealize siya nga dili para sa iya ang boxing, para iya ang architecture. So ni-proceed siya og architecture. So medyo layo kay iyang shift of career, no, but mo na nitabo sa kang Tadao Ando. And Tadao Ando says, I don't believe architecture has to speak too much. It should remain silent and let nature in the guise of sunlight and wind. So mo na giingon ni Tadao Ando. And recently nipalit si Kanye West og balay sa California, sa Malibu, designed by Tadao Ando. This is worth 57 million, kaning structure ni Tadao Ando. And look at the facade, brutalism, pure concrete right here. And next, last topic about modernism is this one, the Art Deco. So the proponents of this Art Deco are architects William Van Allen, Raymond Hood, and Auguste Perret. So Art Deco is an eclectic artistic and design style that began in Paris in 1920s and flourished internationally throughout the 1930s. So the style influenced all areas of design, including architecture and interior design, industrial design, fashion, and jewelry. So the use of steep forms and geometric curves, chevron patterns, ziggurat shapes, fountains, and sunburst motif are typical of Art Deco. So example is kani siya. Actually, dili sa Iron Man, no? But the example here is the Chrysler Building, no? Ang building sa New York na perming ma-appear sa mga movies. So the Chrysler Building. So murag nag-compete lang na sila ni Empire State Building ug kinsay ma-appear sa movie karon na year. Next year si Chrysler na sad. So this one, Chrysler Building was designed by William Van Allen. So ingani siya, no? So modernism ni siya, but the specific term for that modernism is Art Deco. So modernist sa ubos, pag abot sa taas, there's that additional artistic value right here being added by William Van Allen. And actually sa interior niya, mas daghan pa gyud. Actually Egyptian motif ang some of its interiors. No, medyo contrast, 'di ba? Sa gawas it's a modern, but actually sa iyang interior is mostly naka-Egyptian ang iyang motif. And right here, another buildings under Art Deco is this one, the Champs-Élysées in France, and this one, the American Radiator Building by Raymond Hood. So if you notice how modern it is on the lower floors, but igabo sa taas, there's this additional ornaments, decorations right here. Okay, so ingana ang mga Art Deco. Murag they go more, murag modernism siya and then added with ornaments. And we have this one. Sorry, I did it last ang Art Deco. Now we have this last one, the international style or the internationalism. So aside from Philip Johnson, kato sila si Walter Gropius, kato mga members sa Bauhaus, no? And Ludwig Mies van der Rohe are also members of this international style or internationalism. So another architect under international style or internationalism, we have Richard Neutra. Hindi ko kalimot kay wako kailan niya. And then nigawa sa among board exam, and then naragiingon nga to nga a house is like a flower pot. It's a architect na nag-ingon ana. Malay ko ba, di ba? So actually, when I research after, actually I would advise you guys, if after sa inyong board exam, first day, naman ay one day nga kanang rest day, ayaw mo og kanang research ug unsay mga nagawas ug unsay answer kay makaano siya maka-depress. Literally maka-depress gid siya. Kanang studying after the exam, maka-depress na siya, no? Ano lang, mo na mga exam, so just let it go and focus sa next ni mga exam, which is your design, ang second day. Second day siya pero na siya murag na one day and then na mid na walay exam and then the next day na pod. So just to summarize it all, the context of modern architecture and its characteristics is lack of ornament. Although na mga uban nga na mga ornamentation, but it's not the same with the previous styles that they are really well ornamented, especially Gothic architecture. Emphasis of rectangular forms and horizontal and vertical lines. Low horizontal massing, flat roofs, emphasis on horizontal planes and broad roof and overhangs. So in terms of low, this time around the buildings are being lowered in terms of unsay ray need sa tawo. So before ang building grabe katag-as no, ang floor to floor height 6 meters, 9 meters. Kay palazzo lagi. This time around, since office building, residential buildings, condominiums, they tried to lower the height based on the need of that person, of the user. And we have the use of modern materials and systems. So modern materials, the columns, and so on and so forth. I mean the steel columns. And we have the use of traditional materials in new ways. So nigamit ang wood, but those wood are being treated in a way nga pwede na siya igamit ito. For example, sa exterior, pwede sa interior, so on. We have this emphasis on honesty of materials, so brutalism. So if unsay imong material, concrete, raw concrete, so mo na imong facade, so that's it. Wala na kay pintal, wala na kay another additional plastering. So honesty of materials. Mura na siya si Louis Kahn. I don't know if unsa ka weird yun si Louis Kahn in actual. If makita siya material, iyan ang istorya ko daw. Like for example, bricks. Unsay gusto nimo bricks? Ganahan ka sa facade, what do you want? O yan na siya. So, honesty of materials daw ng gihimo ni Louis Kahn. The relationship between interior spaces and sites. So, this is the design of organic architecture by Franklin Wright. Emphasis on open, flowing interior spaces. So, this is the 5 points of architecture. The open planning, free facade, free plan, of flat roof, generous use of glass and natural light, use of sun and shading to enhance human comfort. So katong mga design nila ni Tadao Ando nga naray mga ang cross is not being designed as the cross, but ang iyang gi-design sa cross is mao tong iyang opening sa iyang building wherein nga musod ang light. Okay, and I think this is the last slide before I will show you this last research that you will do. So the last research that you will do is based on this Pritzker Prize winners or Pritzker Prize awardees. So there are a lot of them. It started 1979. You just pick 10 na po kabok. Pick 10 nga feel ninyo idol ninyo nga, for example, ganahan mo ni Zaha Hadid, idol. Or ganahan mo ni Peter Zumthor, idol daw na sir. Wa kailang uban pero idol na ko si Peter Zumthor. Or kinsa pa ilain yung ganahan si Sir Norman Foster, ganahan mo ni Sir Norman Foster. So kindly pick 10, at least 10. So what if you sir ganahan ko tanan, that's good. Because most of the buildings na manggawas during the board exam are based on this Pritzker Prize awardees. Marag magtuyok-tuyok ra nila. Aside from the previous historical styles that we discussed, mostly, ang ipang pag-awa sa board exam is naraan nila ng mga Pritzker Prize winners. So from Philip Johnson in 1979 up to 2021. So wala ko kailaan nila actually. Last nga nakitaan na ko or na memorize na ko is si Shigeru Ban, which is na-meet na ko si Shigeru Ban in San Carlos. Nangyari siya to help the Yolanda victims. So na siya mga design. Mana-mana siya mga poste nga made of ano na siya. Mga paper nga mga poste, yan nga na. May tao na may kayo mo discuss actually si Shigeru Ban. Dila na umasabtan but na siya translator. So that's Shigeru Ban. So again, no, what you will do is pick at least 10 nga makita nyo sa internet or na mo'y makuha niya nga examples. And if you want more than 10, that's good. And do something like this. So, for example, this one, moninaong ni Philip Johnson, give one project, and if namoy makita niya nga quote, ibutang lang, siguro nani kaguol si Philip Johnson, no? Sayang practice architecture, ningon man siya nga architecture is the art of how to waste space. I don't know kung say nasa iyang mind during niingon siya ani, but it's the quote from Philip Johnson and we have to respect that idea of his. So just create a certain murag pwede nyo ibutang sa PowerPoint or gahan mo through sa pamilayan Microsoft Word if asa mo mas feel. Pwede sa inyohang Photoshop if ganahan mo, but do something like this lang. Philip Johnson, first Pritzker Prize awardee 1979, picture project niya, and then if na-quote, pwede nyo i-appeal. If wala, you could add another projects somewhere here. Okay? So, any questions? Sorry, medyo ni extend, no? And thank you guys. Napamay naibilin, I think. Napamay naibilin. So, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm looking at my other screen, no? If sige mo tanaw nga nung siglingi kasi I'm looking at my other screen. Okay, para makita na ko if ever na mo ipang type na question. Okay, so this is our last slide for this subjects. In pila man 2 months, it's around ilaka weeks, and I'm quite glad that I met you guys through this online class, even though if makita ta dili jud ko ka literally kailan ninyo, but hopefully we could meet someday personally after mawala na ning pandemic, and sa paman just go on, continue with all the works that you're currently doing, and kaya na siya. If there are some of you guys that are quite busy, like bombarded with all those projects, actually it's quite good for me. Don't get me wrong. It's quite good that you're having those projects, having those things to do. It's quite good for me. Why? If you ask me why, there are other people that are quite suffering right now. COVID, hunger, war in other countries, and we are actually blessed enough to be in this situation. So to be thankful of your current situation. Try to balance things out. Ayaw lang kayo mo pa-stress. And if unsay makaya, I think that's it. Ayaw lang kayo i-force. This time around in your career, in your student life, this is actually the time that you can make a lot of mistakes. Do a lot of mistakes. Ayaw mo kahadlok nga masayo. It's okay. Masayo pa man ganit nang nag-practice ng architect na or na-architect na. So this is the time that you You can do a lot of mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And hopefully later on when you practice architecture, you could minimize those mistakes like, nagyanan ako ni during my college days and I know this is the correct solution, this is the right solution. Okay, if medyo hesitant ka to do mistakes during your college days, during your student, those mistakes will actually appear during your practice and medyo, sa man pag sa man wala man ko ni na against on or medyo hesitant sad ka. So, mora na akong mag-give ninyong advice and thank you guys, thank you future architects. Just let me know. Matug pa ang akong baby no. Kuya ni siya matug ang akong bata kay tuyok. Naisay nga matug siya gabi, naisay matug siya buntag. Depende sa iyang trip. Yes, pwede. Pwede. Thank you guys. Turret ni KJ. So if namoy mga namoy mga siguro after the SEM, siguro mga within Christmas vacation, we could party in Valorant. Pero lang ko, super iron. Lang, I play just for fun, just for relaxation. Although na ko yung mga examples like, to be honest, I have during the Romanesque architecture, during the vault, during the discussion of vault and barrel vault, the arc, pointed arc, I have these examples na mga pictures within ascent map pero wala na ako giapil. Basig makaingon mo nga weird man si Maestro Hoy. Valorant may discuss. Okay, so if you have questions, guys, if you need something additional info based on history of architecture 2, just let me know. Just chat. I'll leave the teams. Di na ko siya close. If ever you need help in your history of architecture 2. Like for example, sir, nami wala na sabtan sa history of architecture 2. And if I can get another references, I will share it to you. Okay, so thank you, and have a nice day. Good night, guys, and good luck in your exams and in your future other subjects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.